very special edition of Cloud Native Live today, where we are joined by guests Josh and Saim. This is a CNCF live stream, and as such is subject to the code of conduct, which basically is be excellent to one another. Easy to keep in mind, hopefully during these holiday seasons. Please be respectful to one another in the chat and as you interact with one another on this stream. With that, I'd love to kick it over to you, Josh and Saim. To get started, I'm really excited for today and really digging into what you have to share with us.
Nice. Yes. Thank you, Taylor. Great to be here. Great to be here with Saim. We're going to be talking today about platform engineering. We're going to be talking about some of the collateral, some of the guidance that my group in CNCF, Saim and my group, we're both part of the technical advisory group for app delivery projects, and we're both part of a working group in that group called the Platforms Working Group, and we've been doing a lot of work to advance the domain of platform engineering from over the past year or two. So I guess I just kind of introduced myself. I'm Josh. I lead that group. Saim, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Josh. And thank you very much, Taylor. And it's been a pleasure actually being on the call today and talking about the most interesting topic of today's need is platform engineering. And we are really happy and we're really lucky to be working with a talented individual in the platform working group. And we did manage to pull together of two platform white paper. One is platform cloud definition white paper and one is maturity model, and we will be speaking in a minute. And it's been a wonderful journey so far. Managed to pull together two of the very interesting white paper for the community, and so looking forward to it. So Josh, before we starting up, so can you let us know about your early interaction with the community and somebody really new to us in the platform engineering domain? What do you think platform engineering is? And based on your earliest conversation with the community, how do you see and how do you define platform engineering in general?
Yeah, perfect segue into what we need to talk about first. So yeah, before we can get too much into anything, what do we mean by platform? What do we mean by platform engineering? We're going to talk a little bit about why they're valuable. You know, Saim, you asked, Saim and I met a few months ago and did a similar podcast on his podcast, and you asked about platform engineering then too. In my opinion, actually, it has a little bit changed since then. So I wanted to talk about that. So the easy answer is to say, you know, platform engineering, contrast it with product engineering. You know, your product engineers create products that are shipped and given and sold to end users, to people outside of your organization, as opposed to platforms, which are something that you build for internal users, for those product teams to build something on. So, you know, at its simplest, platform engineering means building internal tools, internal platforms, internal facilities that enable, you know, other internal folks to deliver something to their customers. But really, it's come to connote more, and that's what we're going to talk about today, building bridges, for example. What do we mean by that? Platform engineering or platform engineers build bridges. There's a culture that's emerging around platforms, around platform engineering in particular, you know, of collaboration, of bringing people together, of improving experience. So it's a little different than just your classic, you know, oh, an engineer does X. It's also that cultural aspect. Yeah. So, yeah, so with that, I guess our next question, and Saim, do you want to go ahead and ask?
Absolutely. So thank you very much for elaborating it. So Josh, can you talk about I think we managed to pull together two white paper this year. So can you talk about the motivation behind the original CNCF platform white paper we published, I think, during KubeCon Amsterdam? And then I can ask more question on that front.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and bring up this next slide. So, we actually formed the working group over 2 years ago, and originally it was called Cooperative Delivery. And the charter, if you look at it, it was all about how do we enable application developers and infrastructure engineers to work together to deliver everything in a consistent, easy way. Because we found this disconnect between our application engineers and our I guess platform engineers, infrastructure engineers, and so we were trying to solve that problem. And what emerged from the industry in that first year was platform engineering, and creating these platforms is actually what's solving that problem, what's enabling app developers and infrastructure to work together. So once we kind of realized that, we renamed the group from Cooperative Delivery to Platforms, and we decided, let's go all in on this trend. Let's make sure, especially people like directors and CTOs and decision makers are aware of the benefits that this is going to bring. So that was kind of the motivation for our first paper, which is what I'm kind of bringing up here to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. So, Josh, absolutely. So, Josh, I think some of the folks were actually looking at this URL, tag app delivery cncf.io white paper /platforms. Some of the folks actually were right now listening to us or viewing this. So, can you briefly explain who is the attended audience and what domains of PE, platform engineering, are covered in this white paper?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Like I said, we're targeting. This was written, and it's interesting to contrast this with the maturity model a little bit. This first paper was written to pave the path for folks. So if you read it, it starts out, why. In fact, originally it started out with what, because to me it was, the first thing you want to know is what is a platform that we're talking about here. But then we realized, our main goal is to convince directors and leaders that this is the way. And so it actually starts out with the why of platforms and what they're going to achieve for you, which is a slide a little bit later here. But the second paper, so that first paper will educate everybody, but it will really give you ammo to go to your leadership and say, this is really going to accelerate our work. And in fact, I maybe should go ahead and just show that. I'll show this slide where we talk about what an internal platform can achieve for an organization. And this was our goal with that first paper, was to get that across. Do you want to dive into this a little bit, Saeem? What the different characteristics we have here?
Yes, absolutely. So I think as Josh mentioned, like some of the things in here. So I think like on the KubeCon Amsterdam timeframe, when we look at that time frame in a movement, you actually look at it. There's a platform engineering definition for people looking to have a guide available for them, so can basically look and read and understand the platform engineering domain from a various perspective. So I think the team has done a wonderful job curating and structuring it around in different angle. I think we speak about some cognitive load on this white paper, how to improve reliability, how to accelerate delivery, reduce risk, and integrated managed services. So if you're reading it, you have some sort of certainty what those terms means for you in your. I think we have spoke. There is a very long listed of the paper on things in here. Get through or how we organize it. If somebody consuming this today, so what question do you think he's looking at, and how answering those questions?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it. And I'm glad that you called out like so this section here, the slide that we're looking at is actually two parts of the paper condensed into one slide. That first section, we talk about the why, because like we said, we're trying to give folks ammo to advocate for these platforms. So we talk about reducing cognitive load, and we should talk about what we mean by that, why cognitive load has become such a big deal we talk about, so this is all in that first, literally the first page of the paper. We talk about how by centralizing and leaving capabilities with experts, you can improve reliability. Ultimately, accelerating delivery is one of the top values you can get out of providing, a consistent platform. And then finally, we talk about, well, reducing risk. That kind of parallels the improving reliability. But it also makes, if you have a consistent platform, it actually will make it easier to bring in services from cloud providers also. So all this is kind of in that first section of the paper. We can dive into a little more if you want, Saeem. Then we list, and actually the what here, we have a section in there called attributes. And this kind of bleeds into the maturity model a little bit as well, where we try to, I guess, help people understand what the platform engineering culture is kind of about, the connotation, like we said before, not just that I'm building something for internal folks. So there we talk about, we build things as a product. So before we contrasted product and platform, but can you treat your platform as a product, like you're taking it to an external user? So that means a much more customer-centric outlook. We talk about, in that section, we talk about the importance of user experience. Like that's another, like platform engineering connotation is that we really can't, maybe different than, no offense to classic sysadmins and infrastructure engineers, but there's a little more emphasis on, in platform engineering movement, of what is that user experience like? Can we make it self-service? We have other capability, other characteristics in there. Like the capabilities should be optional so that people can choose other paths if they want. And then one of the biggest, leads into the benefits on the why section, make sure that the patterns that people adopt are compliant and secure by default. So if you're going through the paper, that first section is the why. The next section is, here's the cultural aspects that we've discovered in talking with a lot of folks. Yeah. Actually,
Yes, absolutely. So yes, I think that one question people quite to understand, because we actually use some of the terminologies in the paper. So we can speak about all of these things, but we actually can concentrate on one term that basically been very heavily used in the platform engineering domain, and that is reducing the cognitive load. So if somebody is actually viewing this, so Josh, can you describe what do we meant by reducing the cognitive load?
Yeah, let me actually, I want to go back to this slide to address that one. So this slide is the way we, and so we've been talking about platform engineering here, but the question is, what exactly is this platform that we're engineering? And so we attempted to kind of give some enlightenment on that in this paper as well. And I think that it will also show where the cognitive load comes in. Because I'm talking with a customer about this literally today, and they're like, yeah, we know we need to modernize. We're going to do containers. We've got a container system, and we're going to use this container system and that container system, and we're all good. And I'm like, oh no, but there's a lot more than containers that you need to consider. So that's what we kind of tried to call out. What is this platform? So the platform is something that brings together a bunch of capabilities to meet some end user need. That's a pretty generic title, and intentionally so. We didn't want to restrict ourselves to, a developer platform, even though those are, probably the main use case today. But we wanted to consider ML ops. We wanted to consider, information workers. We wanted to consider third-party software. I just want to run some third-party software, some COTS software. So we defined it pretty broadly as this integrated collection of capabilities. But just looking at this right now, like in the platform, you need, beyond just your compute, network, and storage, that was old school. Somebody gave me a server, hooked it up to the network, and there's a hard disk in there. I need databases. I need message brokers. I need an identity system. I need an observability system. I need someplace to store all of my images and packages. I need task and test runners that will execute my tests and will deploy my code for me. So there's a lot more than just, say, containers or just compute that I now have to bring together into my application. And that's what these platforms are, and that's where that cognitive load comes from. Actually, on that topic, I want to show one other interesting slide. So I made this diagram like 5 or 6 years ago to kind of it's a microservice that they actually built, or not a microservice, a couple microservices that were interacting in various ways. And you could see there's just two services here, one written in Go, which is serving the front end, and a back end service written in Java on the side. But look at all those other capabilities that they're pulling in from the environment, from the cloud, from the underlying platform. And this is a typical kind of situation in today's cloud world. And so that's why, to reduce this cognitive load, that's why we've arrived at this platform engineering concept. Like, we're going to have to aggregate this complexity and abstract it a bit from our application developers. So yeah, so cognitive load, back to this slide where we started, cognitive load is probably, one of the main reasons
I
do this.
I did have a question that's from the audience, and it's kind of related to cognitive load a little bit, but kind of more focused on teams and structure of those teams. Keith was asking, is shared investment or tenant cost sharing for platform sustainability consideration for the platform's working group?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, when we get into the platform maturity model, it's one of our theories, and we've heard it from a couple companies, that as you move into a product mindset, one of the ways, so I'm skipping ahead, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but one of the ways to show value is, are people willing to pay? That when you sell a product to your end user, product engineering, how do you really determine if the market is interested? Well, how much are they willing to pay for it? So it's the same thing. If I'm going to treat my platform as a product, one of the ways to really show the value is to somehow demonstrate how much people are willing to pay. So yeah, definitely hearing some companies trying to implement that. Yeah, and we'll get into that a tiny bit more in the maturity model, because it's one of the aspects in there.
Cool. And there was one more quick one. Are there any open standards for platforms, at least that you're seeing right now, just at a high level as well?
Yeah, this is a fun one. I mean, what we're kind of trying to do is reach some standard APIs. Like, if we could have we defined platforms above as a consistent set of capabilities. So the way to get that consistency, I think, is to provide a standard API framework. So you will hear different opinions on this. I think Kubernetes actually is not a terrible API framework for consistent, deployment of all kinds of infrastructure capabilities. Not everyone agrees with that. And so we do have a couple other projects, even in CNCF. A couple have been, so Crossplane is an example of one that people like to use. Another one was submitted recently is called Radius. Another one that's coming soon is called 3Port. So there's a few efforts to create, I guess, less standards and more open source projects with a common API.
Awesome.
So,
awesome. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, that's all for me. I'll come back with more questions, but we'll hold on to this right now. Back to you, Sam.
Okay, thank you, Taylor. Thank you very much, folks. I think wonderful. Hi, Engine. Hi, Leon from one of our platform working group, and Karamat and Keith and Giovanni. Nice to see some of the wonderful folks actually listening and enjoying the conversation. So, Josh, I think we have a few more minutes left on this topic, and then we're moving on to the platform maturity model. So before we jump into the maturity model, can you define, because there's a tag app delivery. We actually coined some, we mentioned a couple of times during the conversation here, and folks might be interested in understanding the tag app delivery. Can you please give us a virtual tour and role of tag app delivery and working groups and assignment of workloads under different working groups?
Yeah, for sure. So let me bring this up so that if people want to check this out, we'll bring it up at the end too. But the job of the tag is really, we really have two audiences. First and foremost is our projects and maintainers in CNCF, making sure that they're supported, making sure that they know what they need to do, and that they have everything that CNCF promises them, helping them appreciate each other, see each other. but also bring to them users and use cases, help them understand the industry. Sometimes I say we're kind of the PMs for the cloud native community. So that's our second audience, are the users, the people that are trying to consume all these projects. What do they need? How can we help them? And so to that, on the project side, we often are evaluating projects that are coming into Sandbox, that are submitting for incubation. We're often, like, we have a group right now called the Artifacts Working Group in Tag App Delivery, where a number of projects that help people bundle up images and manifest and deploy them to a cluster. A number of projects are finding synergies. They actually want to find a way to search attributes of those packages across many different kinds. So sometimes we create working groups to tackle a problem for the project. In the case of the platforms working group, it's ended up that our main focus has been end users. How do we enable end users to really succeed with Crossplane and Kubernetes and all of these other Helm and Kustomize and all these other tools that are coming out that are available? So our job is kind of face the projects and support them, face the users and enable them to integrate with the projects and kind of bring them together. So in some ways, we're we're gonna talk about the role of the platform engineer, and we're talking about that person as kind of a bridge builder. In some ways, we're trying to, in the tags, build bridges between our end users and our project.
Thank you very much, Josh, for explaining it wonderfully well. So now come to the very important topic, and I think that is very, very interesting. We did wonderful job of actually publishing the paper earlier in KubeCon Chicago. So first thing first, what do we meant by platform engineering maturity model?
What do we mean by a maturity model? Yeah, our goal here. So what happened was we got that first definitions paper out in Amsterdam, last April. And we had some success, I think, in showing people the value of platforms, what they are, bringing people, as you were saying, Saeem, bringing people to some common understandings. But almost immediately, we were getting questions. All right, so we want to achieve this. We see the value it can provide. Help us do it. What do we need to do next? What's our next steps? And so at the time, Syntasso actually offered us an early version of what became the platform engineering maturity model. And it was a perfect fit because we realized this can be something tactical for people to, look at and determine what their next steps are. So that's kind of been the goal of getting this effort going of the maturity model, is kind of shift from strategy to tactical. And the question was, what do we mean by maturity model? People are going to be able to find themselves in this model and then identify adjacent possibilities for themselves, to mature a level more if it's appropriate for them.
Yes, absolutely. So Josh, can you actually walk us through different attributes of the platform that's covered in this paper, and what was the primary motivation behind the categorizing the way it's actually categorized today when people wants to read it?
Yeah. So I just skipped through a few slides where it was basically to tell a story of how the platform engineer creates many bridges. So here, that's why I just skipped through those, I guess. But here we see in this diagram kind of the lay of the land for what we arrived at. So before we were talking about some of the key attributes that you'll find in a platform engineering team, we were hoping they would line up exactly with the ones that we lined up as aspects here. It ended up through the conversations in the summer that we ended up at these 5, although we are going to go back and revisit how to juxtapose them with the 7 from the original paper. But basically for each of these, we identified a continuum of practices where you're starting out in a very ad hoc, one-off, provisional kind of way. You progress to something operational, although not necessarily sustainable, not necessarily something that can be funded or supported for a long term. Then we get to something scalable, sustainable, and then finally we can talk about how we optimize and go forward. We were influenced to some degree. Some people might have seen the cloud native maturity model, which is a little broader. Like if we're focused on that middle layer, the platform team, that cloud native maturity model is a little broader. It's thinking about the app team, what they need to do, and the infrastructure teams, what they need to do. But we're really focused here on you on the platform team. Where do you see yourself in these aspects, in the aspect of investment, the aspect of adoption, interfaces, and we'll go into, I think we're going to go into those now, Saeem.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So I think there are some question in the chat, and Taylor want to bring it up.
Absolutely. I did see somebody say it'd be great if there's a standard specification defining a set of pluggable base services and an extension model for creating additional services.
Yeah, I guess on this one, I'm going to go ahead and, since I'm sharing my screen anyway, here you can see the paper, but we did try, and I listed them above, and you can check them out here. We tried to create what I will call the hypothesis, although this has been pretty reasonably vetted at this point. We tried to create this list to get people started of 13 capabilities that you might consider for your environment. I feel good saying about that because I know that there's a similar one that was created by the folks, the Cloud Native Operational Excellence team, Canoe, and they also created this list, and there's a lot of overlap actually between the two of them. So it could be better standardized. I guess I agree with that, but we're all kind of coming together right now to understand what are these capabilities. And in fact, before we go, I will mention an effort in the group now to try to gather more from the industry. But I'll pause there on that.
Awesome. I did see another question that came in, and it was, I'd like to take time to read the paper. How would I find it? And I have gone ahead and put in the link to be able to find this white paper. Definitely, if you haven't read it, check it out. Not sure what your wind down habits might be out there, but if you want to curl up and enjoy this before bed, maybe that's a good thing to do. If you want to read it with your morning paper, also a great thing to do. Check it out. In terms of folks that want to get more involved, I think that you probably will see, more and more folks as white papers, reports, and other things come out, people wanting to get engaged. Do you have any recommendations for folks kind of starting their journey that might want to get involved with Tag App Delivery or anything like that? Any upcoming efforts or things that you might want help on as part of the group?
Actually, yes. Yes, this is I'm thinking how to put this forward. So one of the categories we have here is measurement, which we talk about measurement to show the impact of a platform and its impact on the business. There are other aspects of measurement too, but one of the most important aspects of measurement is getting feedback. And is getting in what we found actually interestingly is that surveys, interviews are qualitative data is one of the best ways to get feedback, but it's also one of the hardest ways. But that's what I'm actually bringing up now. So in our group, we are working to create an interview framework to allow, anybody from the group to interview a colleague platform engineer, gather up some information and share it with us. And our goal is to synthesize that to share with the industry what is the current state amongst, average enterprises. So that's something that, come to our meetings, come to the Slack channel. We're going to have our first run of this next week. I think we have somebody, so thank you. But, find someone from our team that, wants and sit down with them for a half hour and let them ask you about your platform engineering practices and share that with the group. That's a great way to help. So come, I guess, to do that, come join our Slack channel, come to the meetings occasionally, and we'll reach out to you. We're definitely looking for support.
And I've gone ahead and shared that link in the chat. I think it'll just go to YouTube. So if you're watching on LinkedIn, I'll put the link on the screen. Awesome. We did have a couple more questions, and then we can start to round things out, or get to any other topics that y'all might want to get to before we close. We have this question from Giovanni. I'd be interested in real-world experiences implementing a platform engineering team in a larger organization that has been working without a central DevOps team, if anyone can share. Not sure if that might be a great place to listen to some stories within the Tag App Delivery group, or even check out some of those previous meetings or calls.
Yeah, actually, I love this question because it relates to, I wanted to talk about the relationships that platform engineers have with the rest of the company, and one of them is indeed, how you structure this platform team. So we see this in the investment attribute, that we talk about going from no sort of team whatsoever, just voluntary or temporary. And if you look at that, that means me, Miss or Mr. App Developer, realizes we have a need for a pipeline runner and goes and sets that up on behalf of the team. And then a parallel team comes and says, oh, we also need that. Can we use your Jenkins? That kind of thing. As we move to operational, we get a dedicated team. That's usually the organization realizes, okay, we have a bunch of teams that need a portal. Let's get one team to build it on behalf of everyone. But often still at that point, costs are not distributed. It's viewed as a expense, that's been extracted out of these teams. It's not, the value to the other teams is not realized. And that's when we get to scalable as product, when we say we're not just going to throw money at a dedicated team, we're going to get them to define the value that they're providing to the other teams so that they can justify their own existence. So I guess I'm answering the question that there's a continuum, like the situation where you have no DevOps team is kind of that voluntary or temporary. What to do in that case? It also depends. Like, I was actually going to share a story here. I was at I was supporting a company that had disparate teams like this. No, you wanted a firewall exception, you went to the network team. You want a database, you go to the database team. You want a server, you go to the compute team. Something different for everything. I mean, in a big company, that might not be that efficient for app developers. So I guess that's what we created the paper for, so you can advocate to your directors, like, we can achieve more and we can accelerate our delivery by consolidating and putting something consistent over this. I had a story of a big company, and they had a platform team that was as product and even had dedicated support teams. But yet I was talking to an engineer who had built just one little capability and was supporting it all on their own for a few teams. So it was interesting to find that even within one company, you could find, different levels of maturity in this space. So, I guess I didn't give an absolute answer, because it depends on the needs of your group. But, if you're in the voluntary or temporary stage, getting to a dedicated team might be your next step.
Great advice, Josh. I think that anecdotally, I've heard a lot of folks, like you said, what constitutes a large team can differ from organization to organization. Maybe for some folks, that's 50 people, 100, 1,000, 3,000. There are many different kinds of ways that people interact. And then at those different scales, things, composition looks a little bit different. In some folks I've talked to, that some do have that central team that kind of handles all the things. They're the catch-all group for platform engineering. And then others mirror what you were talking about earlier in terms of productizing these different services, and then even offering different kinds of, it's difficult to centralize, and then it might not always be the best thing to have the central point of failure from a specific team or group or region, things of that nature. So to create products that teams can then host and then get support from those central platform teams are differing patterns that I've seen around the ecosystem. So again, really great advice, and interesting to see how there are so many different ways of solving similar problems within our ecosystem. I did see a couple more questions pop up. Adrian had asked that he leads a engineer platform team with self-service capabilities, a software development framework, IAC components, and the most difficult point was adoption. Do you have any suggestions to improve that strategy when it comes to adoption?
Oh, good. Thank you. So good. Now we'll go to the next slide here. Perfect. So here's the relationships between that platform team and mostly your users, your application developer team. And here, one of our category is adoption, which to us means how do people discover that these capabilities are there? How do they start using them? And again, we tried to create a continuum of practices where to start with, it's just um, it's there isn't necessarily anything in the platform. It's somebody creates a solution on their own, maybe shares it with others. As we get to the second level, we kind of suspect a lot of customers right now are at that second level. And there's opportunity to get to the third level. The second level here is some sort of incentive from the outside is having me use that service. So let's say it's a database service. I saw this story recently from a company. They built a database service. They weren't able to attract people to it. They were just kind of an extrinsic push. You'll get your raise this year if you use this platform, or you'll get full support if you use this platform, something extrinsic. But this team was actually saying, you know what, we're going to add observability, some observability things, some metrics, some traces around our database. And that changed it from an extrinsic push to an intrinsic pull. People wanted to go and use their database because it gave them that capability. So, that shift again from like L2, it's operational, to L3. No, it's scalable. You no longer have to, create incentives. People want to use that platform. Or that capability. And then, of course, optimizing is not only do they want to use it, but you've given them a way to contribute on their own so that they become part owners of it. That's actually kind of tricky. How do you allow them to own and contribute? But definitely, if you're in like the extrinsic push stage, then start looking at ways that you can pull people in intrinsically.
Great advice. Great advice.
Yes, absolutely, Josh. So, Josh, I think we're noticing some of the similar question actually in the chat, and I think the best way you can answer all these questions here is like, let's say in a platform maturity roadmap, we have a matrix, so the table that defining the different aspect of the platform, and in the horizon or leftmost row is we have some question listing in here, like how do user discover and use internal platform. And in the right side, we have some sort of opinionated words around things. So if people are looking at this table or the matrix, so can you just give us a very short description or in a tour of how we lay down the answering and what these rows and horizontal and vertical rows, what question we actually trying to ask, and what answer this table is actually reflecting?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that for the operations line. The idea is for somebody to read that first question: how are at your organization the platforms and capabilities planned, developed, and maintained? And then we gave short things here because you're not going to put in a whole paragraph here. The idea is you can read the paragraphs below to kind of get an idea of what we mean, but then ultimately you'll be able to come back here and reference these shared ideas succinctly. So operations talks about like, how do I prioritize within my team what we're going to do next? How do I make sure that the capabilities that are critical to the business are there? How do I make sure that we're giving consistent interfaces over them? So, as you're looking through here, and in early days, it might be, well, we don't know what we need. Somebody comes in and says, I need a message broker. So, we get to work on that. Kind of an ad hoc, don't know if it's that important or not. Centrally tracked, I can answer, go and read the description, but it means that at least a central team is aware that this team is building a database service, this team is building an observability service, at least trying to put some loose coupling around them. Centrally enabled means a little bit stronger governance from that central body, maybe providing a framework for people to build other services, maybe actually building all those, more of those things themselves. And then we finally get to managed services, where the services become almost end-to-end, complete holistic services managed like you would get from a cloud provider. There's not even there's a much more strong separation between the consumer and the provider. So I guess the idea, to answer your question, Saeem, is take that question, kind of understand what the different categories are, find yourself in there. So if you find yourself right now, a team came and said they needed RabbitMQ, so we told them go build an operator for it. So that probably puts you in. That's a story. That's a true story, by the way. that puts you at centrally, probably tracked. But if you could say, well, all systems need to be built with an operator, let's say, and all need to use AWS or all need to use Google Cloud or something, and everybody needs to use Kubernetes as the API, then you're starting to shift into centrally enabled. So if you can find yourself in one of those and then say, is there benefit for me? Because I don't want to say everybody needs to get to optimizing. Like, you need to know, is there going to be benefit to us, in providing a more consistent interface in moving to the next level? So that's kind of how we see people using the.
Thanks, Josh. And I think absolutely. I think that's a way of actually exploration, because we literally, as Josh mentioned, many of the team is actually looking at the ways how do I actually manage to put in some sort of, let's say, that message broker, or even if you look at in the cloud native, say, I want to do governance and automation, infrastructure as code, I want to push in for the service mesh. So what are the different various ways to operationalize and prioritize the things that the platform needs? So that is basically we're trying to answer here as well. So I think on moving on the question, some of the things are happening on the chat as well. So can you actually, I think before we go any further, I think one thing is actually we draw upon is we have seen many recent discussions and articles around platform as a product. And a typical suggestion is that platform should be treated no differently than building any other product. So if I read through the various aspects in the model, what's your key take on the product mindset? Or is there something new happening within the platform working group as a platform, as a product mindset?
Yeah, very good segue. That's a good place to kind of bring all of this together. So first, I want to mention that there's an effort in our group now, like I said before, to interview platform builders to understand the current state, where they are in this model, verify that the model is even, aligned with what's happening in the industry. I mean, we had a lot of input on it, so we think it is, but we're trying to verify that. So that's actually us treating our papers as a product and going out and learning from everybody. But I think in terms of, from the maturity model, where we see that as product mindset a lot is that pink line. As you go from being operational, I've got a team, at least providing some capabilities, to being scalable to something that this could go on forever. This team is providing a valuable function to the enterprise, and is proving, like we mentioned before, as product in the investment category, proving their value, based on their users being willing to pay for them, perhaps. Intrinsic pull, I've created a product which has a market, I don't have to force people to buy it. Self-service solution. So I've actually gone out and created something people can go to the store and pick it up. They don't have to, call me and find me in the back channels to actually get it. And then finally, we'll skip to measurement. You see insights in the third. We're not just collecting metrics, CPU usage and RAM to collect them. We actually are deriving insights and iterating on what we have based on what we learn. So, in terms of, if you really want to meet the platform as product mindset that the platform engineering, culture really advocates for, if you find yourself kind of to the left of that pink line, think about how you might get a little bit further to the other side, if that's appropriate for your organization.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and really telling us a lot about the TAG App Delivery Group, the white paper and just everything to focus on. I've gone ahead and put up the URL there in the bottom. And thank you so much for throwing up those slides as well. You can scan the QR code, check out the white paper, join the group. All the questions that people have been asking today have been fantastic. We didn't get to all of them. If you want to bring those questions to the group, that's a great thing to follow up and do. Josh, Simon, any parting words, mantras, bits of wisdom for us as we close out the stream today?
Yes, just to conclude here, and then I will go over to Josh as well to conclude. So I think the maturity model is the best tool to help organization reflect on their current state of platform engineering adoption and quickly determines good opportunity to mature their practices and further impact their business. And the model itself reducing the cognitive load for those determining how to build a successful platforms and platform teams. So, Josh, any further words for the conclusions?
I think all I want to say is that, I'm a platform engineer, I guess, at heart, and a bridge builder. And join us. It's all about collaboration and bringing everyone together. So, bridges, platforms, or, bring the whole world together here. So come participate with us. Come help us make the industry better. Thank you.
Keep it together, bring it together. Thank you both so much. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Simon. Thank you all for watching and bringing your questions to us today. With that, wish you a wonderful rest of your day, no matter where you're at, and we will catch you again soon. Thanks, everybody.